Warner Brothers just dropped some big news in their latest shareholder letter: Matt Reeves' The Batman. Part 2 is finally set to start filming this spring, with a theatrical release locked for October 2027. Robert Pattinson, who's been busy bouncing between Nolan's The Odyssey and Villeneuve's third Dune this year, is officially back as Gotham's Dark Knight. The buzz behind the scenes is real. Earlier this year, DC confirmed Reeves had already handed in the script, and word is the studio loved what they read. Even James Gunn teased that the material is fantastic. Now that cameras are about to roll, Jeffrey Wright has chimed in with his own update during a chat with Den of Geek. He confirmed Jim Gordon is going to play a major role in the sequel, and even though he hasn't seen the script himself, he sounded genuinely excited about Reeves' plan. Wright didn't spill too much, but he's clearly looking forward to stepping back into Gordon's shoes and rocking the mustache again alongside Batman. Reeves co-wrote the script with Mattson Tomlin, and the team has kept story details tightly under wraps. What we do know is that the movie will connect directly to the ending of the Penguin series, which shows Oz clawing his way to power after the events of the first Batman. Colin Farrell has already said he'll pop up in a few scenes, though how deep Penguin's influence runs in Part 2 is still a mystery. With all these positive updates, and the fact that the first movie pulled in $770 million worldwide while earning critical praise, fans have plenty of reason to believe this sequel will be worth the long wait. As for the plot itself, we're basically in the dark. For now, speculation is all we've got, and fans have been quick to piece together theories from little hints here and there. One popular rumor suggested Robin would show up in the sequel, thanks to a report by Jeff Snyder claiming a version of The Boy Wonder was written into early drafts. But James Gunn has since jumped in to kill that idea, calling it nonsense. He reminded everyone that only a handful of people on the planet have even seen the finished script from Reeves and Tomlin, so at least for now, Robin doesn't seem to be joining Pattinson's Batman in Part 2. The Batman Part 2 is easily one of the most anticipated movies on the horizon, even after all the delays. And the biggest question hanging over Robert Pattinson's sequel is simple: who's going to step up as the main villain? Batman's rogues gallery is stacked, and fans know Reeves won't have a shortage of options. There's even the chance we'll see multiple villains, which is pretty common in Batman films. But right now, 3 storylines keep popping up more than the rest: Hush, Court of Owls, and Heart of Ice. These theories didn't come out of thin air. Reeves himself once admitted he was intrigued by the idea of Mr. Freeze in his grounded Gotham. At the time, it could have just been him speaking as a fan, but Reeves isn't the type to throw words around carelessly. If Part 2 is planning to lean a little more into the fantastical, Freeze could be the perfect way to evolve the tone while still keeping that dark realism intact. That said, Hush feels like the most natural follow-up. The first movie already dropped some heavy teasers that point in that direction. In the comics, Tommy Elliot is a brilliant surgeon and Bruce Wayne's childhood friend who eventually turns into the vengeful villain, Hush. Considering Part 1 focused so heavily on exposing the corrupt secrets of the Wayne family, bringing in Hush would push Bruce into even deeper, more personal territory. It's a story that could really test him emotionally and psychologically, and the excitement doesn't stop there. Rumors have even floated around that Dan Stevens might be in the mix to play Hush. Nothing's ever been confirmed, of course. It could just be fan casting, or maybe an early studio conversation that hasn't gone public yet. Either way, it shows just how much hype there is for this arc to finally hit the big screen. Heart of Ice would let Reeves bring in Mr. Freeze as a tragic, emotionally driven antagonist, and that could seriously elevate the sequel's dramatic weight if it meshes with the tone set by the first film. Done right, Freeze's arc would hit hard, but right now, all we've got are whispers about conversations Reeves may or may not have had behind the scenes. Until there's a synopsis, real casting news, or concrete story details, it's educated guesswork. If the sequel really is building on the emotional and thematic foundation of Part 1, Hush still reads like the cleanest continuation. The ending of The Batman also left a pretty loud teaser in Arkham with a glimpse of the Joker and that hint about Gotham loving a comeback story, which practically guarantees he'll have his day. Barry Keoghan has been open about wanting to return, not for another cameo, but as a full-on lead villain, and he clearly wants to dig deeper into Reeves's gritty world. Even with all that enthusiasm, there's no official confirmation he's in Part 2, and there's still no confirmed main villain. Out of everything on the board, Hush feels like the strongest contender right now, while Joker seems more like a slow burn setup for a bigger play down the line, maybe Part 3 if that happens. The Court of Owls is the wild card that could slot into Part 2 in a way that feels both fresh and completely in tune with what Reeves built. The first film already rooted Gotham in old money, civic rot, and institutional lies. The renewal fund was weaponized to prop up criminals and politicians, the Wayne legacy got dragged into the mud, and the city's elite hid behind philanthropy while everything rotted underneath. That ecosystem is exactly where the court thrives. They're the shadow board of Gotham's founding families, a secret cabal that keeps the city on a leash through bribes, blackmail, and surgical violence. Dropping them into this version of Gotham doesn't require a leap into fantasy, it just reframes the conspiracy as the natural next layer beneath Riddler's expose. There's a clean line of continuity to exploit. The Wayne Orphanage, the Renewal Cash Pipeline, and Martha's Arkham lineage already tether Bruce to Gotham's oldest institutions. If the court has been siphoning renewal money for decades, they'd be the invisible beneficiaries of exactly the scheme Riddler uncovered. Falcone's death leaves a power vacuum the Penguin is scrambling to fill, and that's when the court would tighten the screws, propping up certain gangs, clipping others, and quietly deciding who gets to wear the crown. Penguin's rise becomes useful cover for something bigger, while Bruce thinks he's hunting another mob war and instead walks into a civic autopsy that points to the true owners of Gotham. Tactically, the court gives the sequel a grounded but operatic threat. Their talons aren't zombies in this world. They're precision killers trained and preserved by brutal, practical methods. Ex-Black Ops with medical augmentation, a whisper of experimental cryo to hint at the Elektra myth without breaking realism. That choice lets Reeves keep the texture of his world while still escalating the action. A talon stalking Bruce through Gothic museums and abandoned courthouses, a blunt force ambush in the rafters of an old theater, a silent fight in a freezing archive under City Hall. These sequences write themselves for a detective thriller that's meaner and more paranoid than Part 1. Thematically, the court puts Bruce on the hook in a way Hush would, just from a different angle. Hush targets Bruce the man, the court targets Bruce the legacy. Part 1 stripped away the myth of the Waynes as perfect benefactors. Part 2 could take the next step and ask whether Gotham even wants saving if the city's bedrock is rotten by design. Bruce would have to confront the idea that he's been treating symptoms while the disease sits in penthouses and private clubs, smiling behind alabaster masks. It forces him to evolve as a detective and as a symbol, trading brute force fear for infiltration, espionage, and surgical strikes that expose the architecture of power, not just its street-level enforcers. There's even room to thread Hush into the same fabric if Reeves wants the best of both worlds. Tommy Elliott fits the court like a glove, a prestigious surgeon from old money circles, the kind of utility player the Cabal would hire to clean up messes and forge records. He could be the respectable face of a cover-up while a Talon does the wet work, turning Bruce's investigation into a two-pronged nightmare. Beat the assassin in the shadows, unmask the doctor in the spotlight. If Reeves also wants to flirt with Heart of Ice, the court could be bankrolling fringe cryo research that accidentally, or intentionally, creates Victor Freeze, adding a tragic human cost to the elite's pursuit of longevity and control. None of this breaks the grounded tone. It just shows how Gotham's masters chew people up in the name of legacy. Joker still sits on the board as pure chaos, but that's another reason to save him. The court represents order twisted into cruelty, the opposite pole to Joker's anarchy. Let the sequel expose the architecture of control, then bring in the clown to smash it later. Barry Keoghan's version feels tailor-made for that escalation, turning Part 2I into a collision between a liberated Gotham in flux and an agent of madness who thrives on power vacuums. For Part 2, the court keeps the focus on paranoia, detective work, and institutional rot, which is exactly where Reeves' storytelling sings. From a character standpoint, this arc gives Bruce and Gordon meaty lanes. Gordon's promotion into a bigger role would put him right in the court's crosshairs, forcing him to navigate a police department quietly owned by people he can't arrest. Bruce would need to build a real network, not just punch from the shadows. More time as the Bruce Wayne persona, infiltrating galas, boardrooms, and foundations, using the billionaire mask as a weapon. Selina's street-level perspective slots in perfectly too. She doesn't care about country clubs, but she'll care when girls in the Narrows go missing because the court needs leverage, and that gives her and Bruce aligned but friction-filled goals. Even with all the good news floating around, the situation with the Batman Part 2 still feels shaky. Those cancellation rumors didn't just appear out of thin air. Clearly, there are conversations happening behind the scenes at Warner Brothers, creative debates, maybe even some internal tug of war over big decisions. James Gunn is in the middle of building out his brand new DCU, which will feature its own version of Batman. That version is expected to be more comic accurate, tightly woven into the larger shared universe. Meanwhile, Reeves' take sits outside of all that, branded as Elseworlds, but the problem is that the Elseworlds label hasn't really been fleshed out, and that leaves the door wide open for speculation about how long the studio will actually support these standalone projects. From a marketing standpoint, running two parallel Batmen is risky. Batman is the crown jewel of the DC brand, and splitting the audience between two different versions could end up muddying the waters. On top of that, you've got box office numbers to consider. Reeves' The Batman pulled in around $770 million worldwide. A solid number, no doubt, but not the kind of explosive performance that guarantees unlimited trust. It turned a profit, it won over critics, but for a studio, that might not have been enough to automatically greenlight a sequel with an even bigger budget. Just look at Joker as the comparison point. That movie shattered expectations and gave Todd Phillips the leverage to go bold with a sequel, leaning into musical elements, taking stylistic risks, and bringing Joaquin Phoenix back without hesitation. Joker earned its creative freedom. The Batman hasn't quite reached that same level of trust yet. Warner Brothers seems cautious here, keeping a tighter grip on the project, especially while Gunn and Safran are reshaping the entire DC landscape.